Today we are making sourdough baguettes. These are beginner friendly, very easy to make. They're soft on the inside and they're nice and crunchy on the outside. To your bowl, you will add 150 grams of active sourdough starter. You will add 300 grams of filtered water. This is a very low hydration dough. It is beginner friendly, and the crumb, you will not see huge holes or big holes like you usually see in baguettes. So if you want to get more of an open crumb, you would use 350 grams of water. So now you will add 500 grams of flour and 10 grams of salt. You will mix everything together. Since we did do 300 grams of water, this dough will be a little bit harder to mix. So just go ahead and mix until everything is well incorporated. You can use your hands for this. If not, you could just use a spatula or your dough whisks, anything you want. Once you have everything mixed together, you want to let your dough rest for 30 minutes and then you will start on your first set of stretch and folds. Now on to the first set, you want to go ahead and grab your dough, stretch it and fold it over. You want to go all around the bowl and you want to do this a few times until the dough starts to resist. I do like to grab my dough and I like to flip it over and do a few slap and folds. This really helps develop the gluten and make your dough nice and strong. That way you get a better rise on your loaf once it's baked. So you can see here that after the first set, my dough is looking nice and smooth. You don't want to overdo the slap and folds because the dough can start to tear a little bit and you don't want to do that. So once your dough is tight and it doesn't want to stretch anymore, just leave it alone. Let it sit for another 30 minutes and then you do your second set. You want to do the same thing on the second set. Stretch the dough, fold it over, then go all around the bowl, and then you want to grab your dough, do some slap and folds, and then you let it rest once again. I do like to take the temperature of my dough. This helps me with bulk fermentation and to give me an idea on when my dough will be ready. I follow the sourdough journeys chart and it gives me an idea on how much my dough should rise before shaping. The temperature of the dough is very important. The warmer it is, the faster it'll ferment. The colder it is, the slower it'll ferment. So you have to keep an eye on your dough. I also like to look for visual cues. That way I know when to stop the bulk fermentation. So on the third and the fourth set, I like to do coil folds. I do not like to stretch the dough and fold it over just because the dough is already rising and I don't want to deflate any of the progress. You can see here that it's very soft. It looks aerated already. So I don't like to overdo it with the stretch and folds or the coil folds at this point. And now I let the dough bulk ferment on the counter for a few hours until it is ready to be shaped. I did mention in the beginning of the video that this is a beginner friendly recipe, meaning it is a low hydration and the crumb will be mostly closed. You won't really have an open crumb. This dough is going to be very easy to handle. You won't need any flour on your surface, if any. And you want to go ahead and shape this dough and put it into your banneton for a cold proof. Putting it in the refrigerator for a cold proof is going to help you shape this dough even easier as if you were to do it now. So I like to do the cold proof. It improves the flavor as well and it's way easier to shape at the end. So if you don't want to do a cold proof, you can just go ahead and skip it and just go ahead to cutting this dough into 3 equal pieces. So this dough is going in for a cold proof. I pre-shaped it and now I'm putting it into the banneton. I'm just going to kind of stitch it a little bit. It doesn't really need a lot of stitching because it is a low hydration dough, so it sticks together very easily and nicely. So the next day, I like to take out the dough and I put it on my mat. This dough is going to give us 3 baguettes. So you want to grab your bench scraper or a very sharp knife and you want to cut this dough quickly. Do not be afraid that you're going to deflate it. Just make quick cuts and you'll get through it fast. So you can see here, I'm just using the bench scraper. I like to use the corner of the bench scraper to do the initial cut, and then I kind of fold the bench scraper down so I can finish cutting the rest of the dough. Now that we're done cutting the 3 pieces of dough, you want to grab each piece and pinch where you cut the dough in. So as you can see here, I'm just kind of grabbing the dough and pinching that part right there together. That way we can close that seam. And then you want to gently roll the dough out, just spreading it, thinning it out. That way it's not too thick. And then you want to do the same for the other 2. So here you can see that I'm kind of grabbing one side of the dough and folding it on top of the seam or going over the seam. I'm trying to make a little bit more tension on this dough. This is not the typical way of, or the traditional way of, making the baguette look like a baguette. The other way is very hard for me, and I find that this way is way easier and I get the results that I want. So, this is not me saying that it is the perfect way to do a baguette shape. This is just what works for me, and I can get away with making baguettes, and my family is impressed, and everyone is just enjoying them. They're very good, and the open crumb isn't as important to many people unless you're a baker like we are, and we know what an open crumb is. But for other people who don't know, they don't really care about those things. So I'm just making baguettes the best way that I can. And again, for this bigger piece of dough, I am grabbing the dough and folding it over that seam. It'll create more tension, a better or tighter dough. That way it can rise nicer and it won't spread out like a flatbread, I would say. So it'll keep its shape if it has somewhat of tension on there. So kind of grabbing the dough and pulling it over if your dough feels too loose or just not as tight can really help. You can see that it made a huge difference on this dough right here, the middle section. So I am going to do the same thing for this third piece. I'm going to pinch the little seams together first, and then I kind of fold the dough over. That way it could create more tension, and that way when I spread it out and thin it out, it'll hold its shape better. I do want to mention, do not use any flour for this part, because if you add flour, the seams won't close together and they won't stay stuck. So it'll be harder for you to get a tighter shape for the baguette. So try to use no flour at all until you're done shaping them like I am doing here. So now that I'm done shaping the baguettes, I'm going to put a little bit of flour over them. That way they can have that rustic look when they bake or when they're done baking. And you will see that most people put the dough into like a towel or some sort of cloth. I do not find it necessary to do that because I bake this dough right away. So now that I am done with this part right here, I like to put it on a baking tray so they could just rest there. And I preheat my oven to 475 degrees. I do not put any flour on the bottom of this dough because I don't want the flour to burn the bottom of the baguettes. So I just put flour on top. You do not have to preheat the baking tray that you are baking the baguettes in. I'm just using a basic cookie sheet, nothing fancy, but you do want to add a baking tray on the bottom rack. That way you can add boiling water to it so it can create steam. So the oven is preheated now to 475 and I am using a sharp blade to make 5 little cuts, and I am going to put this baking tray in the oven. This is what it should look like. The baguettes on top, and then this baking tray was preheating in the oven, and I just added boiling water to it, and this will create the steam. You will bake this baguette for 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, you want to take out that tray with the water on it and then finish baking for another 10 to 12 minutes, or even longer if you want them a little bit darker. This is what the end result is. They came out perfect. They're beautiful. They look nice and rustic, and they taste delicious. So if you are struggling with making baguettes and you want the easier version, this is it. They came out so good, and I hope you guys try this recipe out. This is what the inside looks like. You can see it's nice and fluffy and soft. So thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys in my next one.